Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. And the ancient art of wire it is. The ancient art of wire predates the Phoenicians by 5,000 years. It's been found in the pharaohs' tombs, on Roman soldiers, breastplates. It's in museums in different places of the world. It's an amazing art. So before we get started, if you're new to my channel, I'm very detail-oriented for beginners. Please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell. And it takes 1 second to give me a thumbs up. So your comments and feedback are really appreciated. So I was thinking about this morning when I woke up, just making a very quick ring. And I've got a ring mandrel here, and I'm going to be making a size 7. This is an old wooden ring mandrel. One of the things I noticed about mandrels, even if they're supposed to be US sizes, is they're all a little different. So 7 on one could be 7.5 on another. So you might want to buy a couple and match them up. I have a metal one as well. So I just woke up this morning and I thought about how to make just a really quick, fun spiral ring. I did one with washers, but that takes longer. And so I was just thinking about it and I thought, let's just do this impromptu. So we're gonna need some excess wire. I'm just using some corded rope here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap around my size. I'm gonna do a size 7. Three times, because I want to have enough length on the side. So it's really going to be working out to about 3.5 times, or to be on the safe side, you could do exactly, it looks like 5 loops, but we're going to be, if you want a 3-wire shank, you're going to need 5 loops. You can either center these right up here, which will make it about a 2.5 wire shank, because we're going to be rolling the ends back to make our little spiral. So I'm going to pinch off right here where my thumb is, pull it off, and that's going to tell me what length of wire I'm going to need. It's always surprising. So I'm down on my board here, and each one of these is a 1-inch square. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and a quarter inches. So I'm going to start with that for a size 7 and hoping that it comes out that size. So I'm going to cut 10 1/4 inches of 18 gauge round wire. And I'm just straightening my wire with my fingers. I'm going to put this down on my board and go ahead and cut 10 1/4 inches. It doesn't have to be exact, but it's helpful to be close to where you want to go. So now I'm going to spiral back one of the ends, and you can actually add beads to this. It will take longer. I'm trying to do just a little 10-minute. It's going to take longer doing the tutorial than 10 minutes, but in reality, I would say you could do this in about 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm making a little curl. And if you don't want to add beads, you can close it off. If you want to add beads, let me show you just quickly. You're going to leave an open spiral, okay? And then you just want to keep coming around, and you have to determine the size of your beads. So if you're going to be using 2mm beads, you might want to take, I will pull out a, where are they? Let's see, I need my black spinels. Just had them out this morning. By the way, you guys, I want to show you something. I did yesterday, sorry about all the noise, I'm looking for my spinels. So this is a very tiny 2mm bead. Let me see if I can get this in the palm of my hand. It is so little. So here's a little 2mm bead, and you want to make sure that if you're going to add the bead, that it fits in between. So you could start here in the middle weave in your bead, and then open up your spiral as you're going and start weaving in your beads. And that would be really pretty. So I'll just give you an example really quick because I wanted to make this a really quick spiral ring, but I'll show you, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do the whole thing. You got to make sure your wire is going to fit through your bead. The smaller the bead, the smaller the hole. I'm unraveling about 2 feet of 28 gauge wire. I'm always impromptu and spontaneous. I change up as I go. So I want to show you how. Now you could also hammer this, which would give it a really unique look. But I wanted to show you how you would bring in that bead and making sure that you have enough room. This wire is really long, so I'm having this weight back here. So you'll have to forgive me as my hands are going crazy here. Trying to think of the easiest way to show you how to do this. So let's come around here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this out and make my life simple. Try never to fight your wire, so think about the easiest way it is. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to coil and then slide the coils down. I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place. And I've got this big, long piece of wire, so you're going to see my hands. It's snowing. Oh my gosh. Moving away from the wire as I make my coils. So I'm doing 3, then I'm going to do 4 and see if that's, sufficient enough. So I'm going to slide this down, just sliding it down with my finger. I'm going to turn my wire around. This wire is really long, so forgive me as I move out of frame a little bit. And I'm going to keep sliding it to determine if that's too much wire to get the bead where I want it to go, or if it's enough. I'm going to slide this back and up even more, and you can play around with it, right? So I'm going to slip my bead. Oops, this is what I mean. It's a really long wire, and when I'm pulling on the weaving wire, which is 2 feet long, it's going to yank my wire away from me. So I'm going to slide this bead down. It's going to be hard for you to see this, but you'll see it in a minute. And line it up. This has got to go all the way around. So I can line it up so it's crossing down below. You see what I'm doing here? Or you could bring it this way, all the way up, and I might have too many coils, and start here. So I'm going to start here. I'm holding firmly. And do you see where my bead is resting? And then I'm going to start wrapping. So I've got to come all the way out over here to the outside of that wire. And I'm just bringing, here's the wire, bringing this wire, weaving wire around. And then you're going to weave up. But you can actually do this in about 20 minutes if you're not adding beads. This is what's going to take up your time. So I might just do 1 for right now. And I'm going to keep coiling until I come in, because I need to move that back. And that was probably too many coils up there. But I'm going to always work with what I have. I'm coming out of frame a little bit when I have to go back to where the wire is. So maybe I won't come out of frame and you can just see me holding it. It's awkward with all that length back there. So I'm going to slide this up. And slide it back. Now I want to make sure that my little 2 millimeter bead, as I'm coming around, is going to fit in there. And this is what I mean by over here. I might have made too many coils. So I can always close this off a little bit or not have done the center coil, meaning the center bead inside the starting of the coil, and started my beading here. It's, you know, it's okay. All of it's okay. So I'm going to probably start adding more. So let me get my coils in here quickly so that I'm going to coil up. I'll be right back so that I can start setting another bead. Okay, you guys, so I changed up a little bit. So what I did is I backed out of the coils, and I've got about 3, 6, 7 coils here. And what I'm going to do is just start connecting my beads and then slowly spiraling my wire in. It's hard to find this hole, I'll tell you that. I know you can see it because you're seeing from an expanded camera lens. Oh my goodness, I gotta put it down and roll it around on my finger. Whoops, it's so tiny. There it is. It's a tiny little hole. Okay, plus it's black, right? So I know it seems like I'm out of frame a lot. I've got 2 feet of wire back here where I'm sliding that bead down, right? So I'm going to swing the bead over and line it up to the coil. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start bending the spiral around after I set that bead. And I'm holding the bead super firmly, and I'm using my fingernail to really tighten it around the core wire because I don't want it to slide. So I'm making a little loop so I don't have to keep coming over that 10 inches of wire. And that's another good technique. I'm always going to give you good techniques to help you advance and, you know, really increase, God, I don't have any words this morning, advance in this incredible ancient art. So I'm going to start rounding this out here. That's my 5th. I'm just going to do them 7 wraps apart. And I'm just holding firmly. That's 6. And I'm going to come down here, get my pliers, and I'm just going to squeeze these wraps together. This is the year of the snake, by the way. Oh, here's what I wanted to ask you guys. I worked on this for 3 hours yesterday. That's how long it took me. I did a tutorial. I was hoping I could do it in 2, but with all the weaving, and it was completely impromptu and stopping, it took about 3 hours. If you're interested in learning this, I created the tutorial, but I need everybody's feedback. And what's crazy about it is that I never know what I'm going to create or what it's going to be because I can't sketch worth a crap. So this being the Chinese year of the snake, it worked out to be this beautiful contemporary snake pendant. So you can do it, you can wear it either way. You can hang your chain up here, add more beads and drop them from the bottom. But I really loved the way it came out, and I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna reach out and see if you're all interested in this. So let's get back to our spiral ring. So I've got my 7 wraps. Now before I put in my next bead, I'm going to get in here and start shaping this 18 gauge wire. Now you could spiral all the way before you add your beads, but it's going to be harder to get in there, and you're going to have to really manipulate the wire a lot more, making sure you have the right amount of space. I can start pulling this in. See the space here? In between that inside little curl and the outside wire. So that's really critical. That's why I'm going to keep moving the wire around after I add a bead. So I'm going to come around, pick up my bead. Hopefully this time I can find that little hole faster. Slide it down. And then I'm going to come over the top. So now I'm going to really push that bead down into the wire. And your first wrap is really important. So you want to hold the bead and pull. I am using my fingernail to anchor and semi-twist that wire sort of to really tighten it around the core wire, that spiral wire. See what I mean? If you made your spiral all the way first, you may not be able to get your beads in there. So it's easier to do it as you go. So I'm going to do my 7 wraps. Five, 6, and 7. Then I always turn my wire around in the best working position, and I'm holding my hand, my thumb and forefinger over the spiral and gently pushing it around. So I'm pushing it around, arcing it. I can always bring it in. So I don't want to bring it in too close yet until I decide on where I'm going to set my bead as far as how far away it is from the spiral. I can push on the arc of that a little bit. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to put my bead down just to make sure that it's fitting in between those loops. So this is not going to be a 10-minute ring, y'all. Or a 20-minute ring. Once we get the spiral done, it's going to go very, very fast. So I'm going to open this up just a little bit, and I'm just simply going to do that with my plier. Just going to swing it back. Give myself a little bit more room. So now I'm going to bring in my bead. Have to pause there for a minute, you guys. My hand was going numb, not from gripping. I have and maybe some of you do. Normally I don't like to really share this information, but then I figure, what the hell, right? I have chronic Lyme's disease, and it's not very fun. And I've had it for over 20 years, and unfortunately I was diagnosed too late. And I have done probably 100,000 in modalities to try to at least control it a little bit, and it's caused permanent nerve damage in different areas of my body. And so it affects, and I'm not looking for sympathies, so it's all good, you guys. I'm just grateful to be above the roots. But it affects you neurologically because the spirochete, which is one of the co-infections of the Lyme's, lives in your spine, and it affects your cell walls. And anyways, that's all gloom and doom, so I'm going to stop now and not go on with it. But when you see me stop or pause, I'm actually shaking my hand, my right hand, because it's going completely numb, and I lose complete loss of feeling. So forgive me. Hope that didn't bother you hearing that. I really never look for sympathy. I just accept this as, what it is, and I work the best with it as I can. So if any of you have that, I have a lot of experience and research in it, and there's a lot of natural things you can take if you've had long-term Lyme's, because 84% of all Lyme's victims also have severe mold toxicity. So it's really important that your home is mold-free. Okay. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We all suffer traumas. No one is going to escape it, whether it's mental, physical, emotional. We all have our own little things in life. So I never think of myself superior to or inferior of. So I'm going to set my bead now. And I'm not sure how many I want to put in because I'm going to lose a lot of length because I originally started off with wanting to close off this spiral. So I'm going to start arcing this around, and I'm back here holding firmly, and I'm holding on my spiral, and I'm just gently rolling it as I'm gently pushing, okay? I'm not pulling because I need to watch that gap space. And this may be my last bead. You can keep going, y'all. I mean going, adding beads. You just need to cut more wire. So that looks like it's a little tight. See how the bead isn't falling through? Oh my gosh, it's snowing. I know I said that already, but I'm in Sedona, Arizona, y'all, and we've had the warmest winter. December was cold, September was cold, so I'm just opening that up. And boy, oh boy, did March say we're not letting you get away with it. We're having winter now. So I'm going to fold this over the top. Now here's something for beginners. Wire has memory. So if you want to preset your wire, you can fold it over into the direction that you want to go, and it'll make it easier for you to set your stone. There's my hole. Okay. So I want to let you know, by the way, how much wire we've already used out of 2 feet. I've got a little over, got 18 inches out of that 2 feet. People are always amazed when you tell them how much wire when we're weaving it takes to weave. They're just so surprised. I've got some pieces with 60 feet between my total core wires and my weaving wires, especially if I'm using 8 to 9 to 11 strands of wire. So I'm setting that stone in there. See how pretty that is? And I may not wrap anymore because I really want to get to this ring. But you can keep going with wrapping your spirals. Wrapping your beads in your spiral. So at this point, I'm debating. It would be really pretty to keep going, but I think you all know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do my 7 wraps. Looks like I crossed over there. I did. So I'm just going to roll that back and tuck it in. That's 6, and that's 7. Because I am thinking I'm going to roll this in, I think that's good for right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rolling it in closer. So notice that, because I'm going to start coiling more. So I'm going to keep coiling. And I'm probably going to do about, I'm going to say 25 to 30 coils. So let me do 25 and I'll be right back. So I did my 25 coils, and then this wire here where we started our first bead, I'm going to snap that off. And all that is a little wiggle jiggle, and it breaks off very clean in between the wire. So now I'm going to start bringing my spiral in, and I'm doing that by rolling this inside, rolling this in. I'm rolling it in. I don't want to use my pliers, so I'm going to keep turning my work around in the best working position, and then I'm going to start squeezing it. Now, if it's hard on your fingers, you can come in with your nylon jaw pliers because I don't want to mess up my weaving. And if you get a plier in there with all of those coils, you might. So I did my 25 coils in this section here, and then I'm just going to keep swinging it in. Watch my spacing as I get closer and closer. So we've got this beautiful little spiral with these gorgeous black spinel 2mm beads. Now, as I mentioned, you could have kept going. Now at this point, I'm going to just come a little bit closer in, and I'm going to connect. I'm going to actually loop through and over these spirals here, and I'm going to come around and underneath. So it's kind of like a figure eight. Oh, bear with me a minute. This is probably the first time I've ever done a tutorial where my hand was just going horribly numb. So if I pause for a minute, it just means I'm shaking my hand out. Okay, so I'm bringing it through. Oops, I didn't get it through the right spot. I need to get it through in front of that bead. Can I slide it through? Yes, good. Okay, so I'm bringing it through, and I'm literally going to turn it around. I want to line the wire up on the back of the coil where it's lined up with the other coil wire. I don't want it off on an angle. And then I'm going to line it up, and I'm literally going to cinch it through these coils so you literally cannot see it. Then, to continue that, I'm going to come back around the wire, my little figure eight. Then I'm going to coil over, and I'm going to do that one more time. So I'm coming up underneath. Then I'm going to turn my wire around, and I'm going to feed it through. As you're pulling your wire through, this is a good tip for beginners. Always keep a healthy loop in your wire. That way you avoid kinking your wire up. So down here, see how it's on an angle? I'm going to move that next to the other wire so that it lines up. And before I cinch it in, I'm slowly pulling to make sure that it's lining up. And then I'm going to cinch that wire in. You will feel it lock in where you actually cannot see it. So it's coming over the top, which means I'm going to go in between. Then I'm going to use my fingernail to line it up and give it a good snug and cinch it down. And then I'm just going to coil. I'm going to say, I want to pull this in here a little bit. I'm going to be very gentle with my plier if I can. I'm just pulling that center spiral towards the coil a little bit. Be very careful not to mess up your coil. There we go. It's all personal preference, everybody. It's just what you see and what you like. Okay, so now I want you to do, let's see, 15 coils, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I did my 15 coils. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my spiral facing me. Okay, so it's facing me. And I'm just going to gently push this wire up. Okay, so now we're going to set it on our mandrel because this is going to set on your finger. You can weave all the way up, you guys, but I'm not going to do that on the wire because it's going to take too long. So you can weave all the way up, and that's a lot of coiling. So it's going to set on your finger like this. So you can make it as big as you want, but if you're going to add beads, as I mentioned earlier, then you need to add more wire. So if you wanted this to be, right now, the center coil or the center spiral is 1, 2, and then 3, almost 3. So if you wanted this to go around one more time, I would add 2 inches of wire. So here's my size 7, and I'm going to set the wire here, and I'm going to hold firmly, and bring this wire around. Then I'm going to bring it around again. And then I'm just squeezing my wire in, you guys, okay? Then I'm going to connect it right here. So before I go any further with my ring design, I'm going to connect it. So I'm going to come in here. The wire's already coming out the back. And I'm going to coil around the outside wire, then come through the shank of the ring. That is definitely a 7. Good. Sorry, you had to pause there for a minute. You're going to see how fast I'm going to go through this 10 1/4 inches of wire. And then come back in between. Then go through the shank of the ring. And I'm just making a loop so I don't have to feed that long wire through there. And I'm going to come in this way and slide that in. Then I'm going to wrap around the bottom. So I'm going around the bottom wire once, 1 full rotation. I'm going to put this back in because I want to make sure I'm not yanking on my shank too much. And I could be stretching it out. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm holding my thumb over the spiral. I've got my finger on the back of my ring dowel, and over here I'm pulling the wire. So I'm pulling it in, pulling it out, because I want it nice and tight around that size 7. Because we're going to be loosening that wire up as we're holding on to the shank. Now, you could make this so decorative, you guys. Literally, you could keep weaving as you're wrapping your wire around your ring mandrel. I'm just going to do a couple connecting weaves, and then I'll connect off again. So I'm coming over the top of the 2 wires, coming in between them, sliding my wire up, making a loop, feeding the wire through. Now I'm coming underneath, and I'm going to wrap around this wire again. And I'm going to do 1 more repeat, which means I'm going to repeat this pattern, and I'm going to have a total of 3 sets of that pattern, okay? Or 3 repeats. So I'm going to push my wire through. Then I'm going to come in between, slide it up, push my wire through. Just if you can feed it, if you want to feed it through that spine, coming underneath both wires on the back, and then I'm going to coil off. Now I'm going to put my little spiral ring back on my mandrel. I'm going to tighten it up, so I'm pulling here. I'm just as if I'm straightening the wire, and I'm going to come around again. So I'm just following the first ring shank, and I'm almost out of wire. I'm not sure I'm going to get 3 full, because I was going to make another spiral down here. And let me know if you want to see that as a tutorial. I might make a smaller spiral. So now I'm going to connect these 3 wires. So you can do so much of this. So the wires coming out the bottom, you can actually leave it on your ring shank for a minute if you want. I'm sliding that wire in. Now I'm going to take it off. So if you guys were going to do a bigger spiral, and I used 10 1/4, and you wanted to double your spirals up on each side, I would probably use 12 inches minimum, just to make sure you don't run out. So now I'm going to go over the in between the 2 shank wires here, pushing it through. Thought I had it in there. And then the wire is coming out here. So I'm going to slide it up a little bit and then push it back, but I'm not going to tighten it up yet because I'm going to come in between, and then I'm going to give it a good snug and tighten it up. Now I'm going to go over the top shank wire, and I'm going to feed that through my gap space. And being the year of the snake, this could be a great snake head. You could change the shape a little bit. Now I'm going to pull that wire through, and then I'm going to push it through. So it's coming underneath, and then I'm going to come in between the two wires on the bottom. I'm going to push it through the two wires on the shank, pull it around. Well, it stops popping out. Slide it up. So let me get my pliers in here and really cinch these up together. And then wrap it around the bottom wire. And I'm going to do that 3 rotations. So let's do this one more time in case you got a little confused. The wire is coming out underneath this core wire here. I'm going to wrap over, if we count this as 3 wires, the first 2 wires. So I'm going to feed that wire through the 2 wires in the middle, or the 2 shank wires. I'm going to slide it up, but I'm not going to pull really hard yet because I want to bring it in between the number 1 wire on the bottom, and then I'm going to slide it up and give it a really good snug. Now I'm going to work in a different position because my wire is getting shorter, so I'm coming in between the 2 wires. Then I'm going to slide those through. Then I'm going to come back in between all the wires in the shank. So I'm just going to push that wire through. Then I'm going to come back in between the 2 bottom wires, and I'm going to push it through these 2 wires. And I'm going to do one more repeat with this, and I'll be probably adding wire, meaning weaving wire. I will have done 3 repeats and gone through 2 feet of wire. So now I'm just going to slide this up and push with my fingernail, and then give a little rock on that wire so it's nice and tight in there. Now see how I've got a little loop sticking up on there? Can you see that? I'm going to pull. I snapped my wire. By the way, I was thinking about that when I did it. No problem. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going, it was so tight in between there and I was yanking on it too much. But that's okay. I'm going to show you how to add wire. So that's too short for me to snap. So I'm going to show you another technique. If you don't want to use your tweezers, you want to pull as tight as you can and then twist. And you're hardening up that wire, and I'm trying to get as close as I can to the ring shank so there's barely anything sticking up, and then I'm just going to press it down. So now we're going to add wire. So I'm going to cut myself, I'm thinking about 18 inches. Okay, so now I'm going to add wire. Now I need to go back up, so I want to make sure that my wire is going to roll up and over so that it's going in, it's going to continue that pattern. So I'm just going to make 2 wraps, bring this up, and slide this wire all the way in. If I have to, I'll open it up a little bit. So now I'm going to complete that pattern. Now my wire is really long again. So I'm going to feed it through the 2 shank wires in the middle and then slide it up. Then I'm going to come over the top. Always try to get in your best working position so that I can feed that wire in between. Now, when your wire's really long, we have a tendency to kink it up easy. So slowly pull it through in that direction. Then I'm going to come up underneath and I'm going to come in between the two bottom wires. Now I'm going to slide these together. Really cinch them up. Now this wire right here, because we added the wire, I'm just going to do a wiggle, jiggle, and snap it off. And it will break off in between very clean. So now I'm going to finish that. And I'm going to come through the two middle wires. But you can see how very long this would take if you wanted to do this weaving all the way. And then I'm going to come in between. And I got to watch to keep a healthy loop back there. So keep your loop kind of laying back a little bit so you can slide it through. And maybe before you bring it in between these two, that way you won't harden the wire and snap it like I did. Oops, I meant to stay underneath. And now I'm going to complete my rotation. Now I'm going to put my ring back on my ring mandrel for my size 7. And I'm going to tighten these up. So here's my excess wire here. I'm holding the spiral with my thumb down and my finger on the back. And I'm going to pull this wire right here. I'm just going to rock it. It's going to tighten it up so that the wires line up. And then as before, I'm just going to start swinging this wire around. And see what I mean? How fast we ran out of that 10. And I'm just going to make a small loop. Okay? So I'm going to come back here and start weaving wire to connect this. And then I'll just make a small loop and I just won't add any beads. And we have this beautiful ring. So I'm going to go ahead, pull this out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this wire down here. But I need to close off those coils. So there was only one down there. So I'm going to close off with 3. I'm going to lift this wire up. Just want to bind that with 3 wires, 3 coils on the bottom. And I want 3 full rotations, but I want to snap off on the inside, not the outside. So I'm going to bring that wire through. Oops. There we go. Then I'm going to slide it up, and I can see that I'm stretching my ring band, so I'm going to tighten that up again. And then I'm going to come this way, and I'm going to hold the inside of the ring shank so I can snap that wire off in between those two. And there we go. So let's go ahead and put our ring back in. And now I'm going to tighten up on my shank. And I'm going to do that by holding just the sides now and really pulling on that. And that's going to tighten them up. So you can see how fast you could make this if you didn't add beads and did all this weaving. Really pulling on that good and tight. So now this excess wire that I have from that 18 inches I cut, I'm going to come back here. Right now I'm going to wrap, I'm going to say, how much wire do I have here? 10 coils. So that's 10. Then I'm going to pull this wire up here, my little tail wire. Oh my gosh, it's still snowing. And I'm going to slide it down. Then I'm going to put it back on my ring shank. And I'm going to make sure, because it wants to loosen up naturally, and I'm going to slide it back even more. because I want to weave in up to this point where we left off with the other weaves so that it looks like just right here where we started connecting our two shank wires together. I want to weave up to that point. Now you could just do, you can do whatever you want. You could just move these 10 coils straight up and then weave straight up there, but I wanted a little bit more decoration down here. So it's just really up to you. It's all personal preference. So now I'm going to pull that out. And as before, I'm going to hold my tail wire down. I'm going to feed my wire through the two wires on the ring shank. And then I'm going to pull it through. You want to have a healthy loop. Slide that up a little bit. Then I'm going to tighten it up and bring it in between. And open this up if you feel like your wire is catching. So now I'm going to turn it around in a good working position for me. And I'm making just a little soft hook there. And I'm going to feed this through in between the two top wires. Then I'm going to keep my little loop there and start pulling it through. And you kind of want to pull your wire in the direction of the loop. So now I'm going to pull this back through. So I'm pushing it through with my finger just so that I don't have to drag 16 inches of wire through there. Then I'm going to come up. I want to make sure I didn't cross over back there. I did. There we go. I caught that. And now I'm going to come up in between. Then I'm going to feed that wire through the middle. And as I'm feeding it through this time, I want to take the wire and push it through the middle so it maintains the complete loop shape. See how the wire is shaped there? So that it will slide through a lot easier because I'm going in the direction of the wire. I'm just going to push that loop back a little bit so it continues pulling through smoothly versus really yanking on it. So now I'm going to slide up. You can slide your wire back and forth until you're satisfied with the desired amount of weaves that you like. I'm going to open this up a little bit and continue that with 3 repeats of that pattern. This is 1 set or 1 repeat of that pattern. So I'm going to start again. I'm going to make a little hook. And then I'm going to push it through the 2 wires here so that it feeds through the ring shank. And then I'm going to pull it in the direction of the wire so that it's a very smooth transition. Then I'm going to come in between, getting in a better working position. Now, if you find that you're struggling to get your wire in there, just slide it back. Slide your weaving back. Give yourself some working room. Try not to fight the wire, especially when we're starting, we fight it a lot. So I'm actually going to move that back a little because it's really easy to slide your wires when you have a circle. When your wire is rounded out like this, it's so easy to slide it. So I'm going to get in a good working position here, and I got my little hook, and I'm going to feed it through that gap. Now you can keep your finger inside this loop. See the loop right there? To keep it in that shape. And then remove your finger and continue to pull until you cinch down that coil. Then I'm just going to push it through. Don't want to cross my wires over. So I'm going to slide that down a little bit, get it out of my way. come in between. I'm going to feed that through so it's coming out the bottom of the ring shank. I'm going to keep my finger there so I have a nice healthy loop. Remove my finger and tighten that down. And then I'm going to wrap over the bottom. So that's 3 full repeats. Now I'm debating if I want to do 2 repeats of that pattern. If I want to do one more. So I'm going to slide this up for a second to give myself a visual of where I'm going with this. And I'm thinking that's good enough. Instead of I could bring it all the way up. There we go. Yeah, that's going to work for me. So I'm going to put this on my ring shank, my size 7, and I'm going to, again, tighten up, because you loosen up your bands here as you're working and pushing on your wire. And then I'm going to really slide that up. So I'm sliding it up to where these wires, these weaves here, are meeting up. Okay, I need to take it off the shank because I had resistance on the shank. So see how easy it's sliding up now? Do you see that? It's just sliding up really nicely now. Just gonna push that in, come from the back. Now I'm going to coil. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to open this up 30. So let me do 30 coils and I'll be right back. So I'm popping back in, you guys, because I'm realizing I might have to bend on these coils a lot. So I'm going to start my swirl here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pliers, and if you're new to my channel, these are Xuron. They're wonderful, especially if you're going to start out making loops, because they're half flat. So they're a flat nose on one side and a round nose on the other. And the benefit of having a half flat and half round is two round noses like this will ding into your wire. Where with the half flat side, and I'm going to show you here in a minute, and this is not me plugging Xuron, they should pay me for talking about these so much. These are their 489 Xuron plier, okay, the 489. It prevents you from dinging the outside of the wire as you're creating your coil. So I've got the flat side on because I'm going to be coiling in. So I could either coil in this direction or I could coil in this direction. It doesn't really matter. I want my coil to go in the opposite direction of this one. So I'm going to start coiling. I'm going to hold in this position where the wire is running on top of your ring shank. And then I'm going to take the round part on top of the wire, so the flat part of the plier is in the back, and I'm going to squish that tip down. Because I'm going to close off this spiral. You can have an open spiral. It's whatever you visualize. And I'm going to make the tiniest little loop. And I'm really going to start curling that in to itself. By flattening and shearing out that tip, it allows me to make even a smaller loop. Now you could leave that open a little bit, or you could close it off. It's whatever you're visualizing, okay? So now I'm going to start spiraling this in, and then I'll adjust its position. I'm just going to keep it in a really good working position. If you haven't spiraled before, it's harder when you're coming off something that's already pre-shaped. So you want to come as close as you can as you're, notice how my left hand is turning in as you're rolling this in. And we'll have to readjust this wire. So I'm turning. So the concept is, but because this wire, now you could swing it out of your way and give yourself more working room. So I'll be holding off on the shank back here. And I'm just going to start turning it in. And I'm debating right now if I want it super close to itself or if I want it more open. So let me look at that. And I think I might want it more open. So, but you can completely close it off because I kind of want to stay in line with the open spiral on top. So I'm watching my gap space. And now I'm going to start closing it off just a little bit. And I'm seeing where I'm lining up. So I need to push this back to see how much more I need to swing this in. Now you could do this off center, meaning this spiral here doesn't have to be perfectly in line with this one on top. It just depends on what you're visualizing. And I'm really glad I stopped on the 20th coil, or I would have really been digging into this coil with my plier. So I'm going to just spiral in just a little bit more and then line it up with my ring shank and see if that's good enough for me. Because I'm going to come back in here, and I probably should have not weaved up as much. This is all freestyle. I just came up with this morning. I mean, spiral rings have been around for thousands of years. It's nothing new. It's just something that I thought about this morning. So I think what I'm going to do is bring this in, and I'm going to uncoil so that I can connect it somewhere. So let me open this back up. It's always great these things happen so that you can see how I make corrections. So I'm going to uncoil, and I may move my coils back, my wraps back. There's all sorts of ways, and I'm going to bring this in a little bit more. Okay, just a little bit more. I'm using my flat nose. You need a good, strong flat nose. Needle nose, you're going to slip off, and, you know, it's not going to be as easy to control the wire. So that looks pretty centered to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncoil even more so that I can connect this. So that probably wasn't the best idea. Let me open this up a little bit because my wire is catching up, and then I'll close it back down. Then I can come in and add coils. Now I've worked this wire pretty hard, so instead of using it, which I could, I know the likelihood of it wanting to snap is very great. So I'm going to leave 2 rotations down here. And I'm going to come in with a clean piece of wire. So where I unraveled here, I'm going to cut to where it's not raveled. Then I'm going to come from the top so I can line up with the coil wires on the bottom. And I'm going to come through. It's a little tedious. I'm going to roll that tail wire over the top and just tuck it in. So as I'm holding on to the ring shank, I can keep it from moving. Then I'm coming over the top, and I'm going to come down, and then I'm going to feed my wire. So I'm making a good loop through the 2 middle wires. And I'm going to slowly pull it in, and I'm going to snap this wire here off in just a second. Now I'm watching that it doesn't kink up, so I'm really making sure I keep a good loop in that. There we go. Then I'm going to come back I need to slide this up just a little bit. And I actually need to feed this through that top wire one more time. I realized I only did one wrap versus two. So I need to cinch off that top wire at least 2 full rotations. I might even do 3. So I'm just feeding it through, holding very firmly. Then I'm going to come through again. And I'm going to feed it through one more time. So I'm curling that wire. I'm pre-shaping it on the end into a little loop. And I don't want it to kink up on the back, so I'm doing very slowly. So will that be secure enough? I'm going to do one more until I connect off on the bottom. So I'm going to make like a little hook loop. Then I'm going to feed it through. And that wire's really hardening up. I can feel it because it's starting to get stiff. And then I'm going to pull it through. Now I'm going to snap it off. Okay, so let's see where we're lined up here. And now I'm going to snap this wire off in the back. So I'm holding very firmly on that wire inside my ring shank. Real firm, and then a wiggle, jiggle, and it snaps clean off in between those wires. You won't feel a thing. So now I'm going to slide this all back up to line up with my spiral here. And now I'm coming here over the top, and I'm going to wrap around my spiral now. So that was a little premature, me coiling, but that's how we learn. Now I'm looking at this gap space here, and I'm debating on whether or not I should come up and do a wrap in there just to really secure it. So I'm going to unravel just 2 times. And I am going to do that. I'm going to feed this under and in between the gap space on the ring shank. And I'm going to need to use my pliers for this because I could feel my hand trying to bend in a direction that was very unnatural. So I'm going to feed that through. And then I'm going to slowly pull it through. Just some more security, okay? Then I want to make sure that it's lined up on the back, and it's not. It's got a little tiny bend in it. So I'm going to push that wire up. And then I'm going to grab it and pull it through. So I'm now going to come down. Should I feed it through one more time? Let's just make life complicated for ourselves. So I'm going to, which direction do I need that wire to come out? There we go. I couldn't really tell from underneath. So I'm going to turn my little hook in the direction that I want to feed it through that gap. And if I can't, I can open up the gap because there's weaving wire above it, but I really wanted to secure it around that last base wire. So let me show you a technique. This is an old wood carving knife. I used to make Native American flutes, and I'm just going to get in there and just open that up a little bit so I have more gap space. Then I'm going to put the little hook side through there. I just wanted to be more secure and have a complete full rotation around the base of the ring shank. Slowly pull it through, and there we go. That's what I wanted to achieve. So I'm going to start pushing all this up. Now I'm going to coil off on my spiral. and you can coil off as much as you want, but we are done. And let's take a look. By the way, you could hammer this, okay, and flare out the curve on it. So you could stop here and just leave it like that, or you could start weaving over your gap spaces. So I'm always going to give you inspiration. That gap space is too small to get a 2mm bead in there. You could ride your beads on top, but I'm just going to close off and use up this last remaining wire. So I think we used about 6 feet of weaving wire, close to it. So I crossed over, and it's going to get harder as you're starting to come around to get your wire in there, because it's going to have to go over those preceding coils. So you might have to come out of it a little bit and slide it down. Now, to avoid any more, I'm just going to feed it through, meaning catching up that wire and hardening it 2 times. I'm going to make 2 full wraps, and I used every little bit of my wire. It's kind of nice for a change. Depending on what I'm creating, sometimes I have a lot of excess tail wire, and then I'm just going to coil. Now, to harden your ring shank, you can wrap half round wire around it. 3 18-gauge wires are pretty strong, or you can gently use a rubber mallet and harden it with your rubber mallet on your ring shank. And I'll show you that if I have my rubber mallet in here. If I don't, then that means I got to go searching for it in the garage, and I'll just pass for now. So I don't really want to cover up any more of my spiral, so I'm going to stop here. And then I'm going to pull it in, because if you remember, I separated it a little bit. So I'm just going to come here and just pull it in a little closer. Then on the back, I'm going to hold very, very firmly. And I'm going to snap my wire. And over here where this one is coming out, I'm going to snap my wire. And here is our beautiful little ring. Isn't that cute? So again, you guys, you could have done this in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just to do a spiral, wrap the wires around 3 times, make another spiral, and then connect them. So you could start connecting them here, just in the middle. So I just think that's just so cute. Let me put it on the ring, that the finger that I knew it was going to fit. So let's turn it around. So easy, really easy to do. And let me see if I have my rubber mallet. I do. And I'm going to do this on a stainless steel ring shank. And I'm also curious to see the size, because on that it was a 7. On this, it's about a 7 and let's see. No, it's a 7. Now, if you do this, you're going to stretch your size, but I really like to harden, and I'm going to come back in here on these ring shanks later and add some half round wire, 20 gauge. Now that's going to make it smaller. So if you need it a little bit smaller, then you just want to slightly tap, but you can go ahead if you need your ring shank a little bit smaller, add in a 20 gauge weaving wire. A half round wire. If you need it a lot smaller, use an 18 gauge half round wire. And I'm just going around and tapping it. And then I'm going to tell you how much that stretched it out, because it will stretch it out. So if you want your ring to be exactly a 7, then you might want to start at a 6.5, only for this design, because we're not wrapping wires around the ring shank. You could also just bring in some 20 gauge wire and start wrapping it around the ring shank. It's really up to you. So let me tell you how much that stretched out. Just that little bit of tapping. So that brought me down to almost a 7.5. So I'm going to pull that out of there. And I wish I was live, because then you could tell me if you'd like to see me put half round wire in there. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me turn it around because I like the bigger spiral on top. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Please give me your feedback, your thumbs up. Don't forget to comment. And if you share my tutorial, please tag me just so that they follow my YouTube page. Have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.